Hello, welcome to part 2 of the 7-watt little push-pull amp project that we're doing, in which we're putting into this WEM PA40 chassis. So as you can see since part 1, I've done a fair bit of work to this. Transformer's still on order at the output transformer, so we're just borrowing him. So I've got the valve sockets are in there, just pop him out. So you can see those have been installed. The boards that I've installed as well, got those installed. Removed those fuses, decided I won't have any of those. Old tatty, and we only needed 2 anyway. So there was 3, so I've got rid of those. I've soldered one into this board here, and what I've done is I've put a mounting screw through there, so it acts as a mount and it keeps that solid, so that won't move at all. It's always important to get these nice and solid and safe when it's got high voltage on it. Transformers fitted, and we've got our bridge rectifier fitted, although we are waiting for some. That's got to come off again because we're waiting some spring washers, M5s. And if you look, you can probably might not be able to see over the top there, but if I just lift it up, we've got an M5 ground connection there, and you can see I've cleaned around that. And again, we're waiting for the spring washer for that, so we don't want those coming loose. So let's just have a look at how I've mounted these boards. Just remove him. So if we tip this back, you can see I've used these nylon mounts, and they've got nylon screws. And all we do with these, when we've tightened them up, I'll tip this upside down, and then we'll put super glue around them and leave them to set. They'll never come loose. So I always use nylon bolts in these boards because I don't want metal in between the components. Just something I do. If a resistor burns for any reason and it's over the screw, then it's rare that it happens, but you just know if you've got the nylon there, you're safe with it. So I always use those. You can see they're really solid, they do a good job. So I'll just show you the mounts that I've used now. These are what I've used, and you see they're usually brass or metal. These are just nylon, that's all. Same thing, screw goes in there, you fasten that to the chassis, then you fasten the board to the top. Simple thing, but effective. So that's that. Now then, another problem I came across with this chassis is how we're going to mount the capacitors, and I'm going to mount them on the bottom, which is actually not the bottom, but this is the back. And if you remember when we looked, it goes up against the chassis. Now there's 40mm clearance between this and the back of the amp now, but I've ordered some 22mm clamps, and I've got some 20mm Japanese capacitors which I've ordered, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to sit those on the bottom and wire them in. So you'll have the bracket there and the cap will go in, wires will be facing up, but that's fine because that's totally isolated the back, so there's no problem with any of this, with anybody getting their fingers through. Having said that, the case does have some meshing on the back and some cutouts, but I'm going to cover those with wood, so there's no way they can ever be poked through, because of course those covers on the back are metal, those grills, and if someone was to push one in and push it onto these, well, then it would be live. So, and again, it's all one comes loose and falls in or whatever, so we'll be boarding it up, boarding up the holes, and we're putting some wood across them, so there's no way anybody can get to any of this at the back. It will be sealed in, and we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail. So I'm going to mount a capacitor here, one here and one here, and they're going to be 47 microfarads. So we've got 47 microfarad for the plates, we've got 47 microfarad for the screens, and we've got 47 microfarad for these 2 triodes, and 47 microfarad for these two trials. I'm just going 47 all through. The reason is I found the capacitors all fit. It'll be fine. So it's probably a bit overkill with the smoothing, but it should be okay. It is only a fun project, but we do want to make this into a really good sounding amplifier. Now, I've had 1 or 2 comments come through about what to put in this, what to wire into this, and I've had a few interesting ones. But one guy, Matt Fields, who follows my channel quite a bit, and he's an amp builder and a very good one, has suggested that these two 17mu triodes that we've got here, remember these are PCL83s that we're using in here, so you've got a pentode and a triode in one bottle, and the triode, the mu on the triode, the gain is only 17 on those, whereas on the 12X7 it's 100 on each triode. So he suggested wiring these up as a long tail pair, which is something I thought about, but then a while ago, and then steered away because thinking I might not have enough gain, only having 212, because I'm putting a tone stack in this, you see, and of course that you then lose some gain with that. But I'm thinking now that I might try that and wire these two triodes as a long tail pair, then have this first stage here, put the tone stack in between these two stages, and then run this stage into the long tail pair. That's what I'm thinking of doing. And I'm kind of thinking that I'm going to take so much of the something like a Fender Deluxe or something like that, and use exactly the same as what on this tube as what you've got in a Fender Deluxe Reverb, something like that, and then we're just going to wire a standard long tail pair into there, and we'll see what that does. Let's have a look at these valves then. So we didn't look at these in part 1, did we? So here's a pair of BCL83s, and they are Mullards. And let's open one up and have a look. So we'll just open this up, and you can see they're in this paper there. We've got a cardboard roll, and you can see these are yellow prints. So that's the tube we're going to be using, PCL83, 12X7. You've seen every man and his dog uses those, but not these. These are, I've seen these actually in 1 or 2 record players in the past, but these are normally found in televisions. So what could be nicer than a couple of output tubes, Mullards there? Excellent. Be nice if we can find a Mullard 12X7 as well. So there we go, that's as far as we've got at the moment. So we've got some parts on order. We've got an output transformer on order, we've got capacitors on order, capacitor brackets on order, jack sockets on order, everything on order. The pots are on order. So this project's we're gonna have to wait until all these things that we've ordered, all these parts we've ordered, we're gonna have to wait till they all come in over the next couple of weeks, and then we'll really push to get this amp finished. So let's have a look at the cabinet. So you can see the cabinet's in a bit of a grubby state, and is going to need a lot of fettling and sorting out. But what I want to do is try and show you what's going on here with this cabinet. So if you can look inside of there, and I'm going to try and roll this in, and I might just have to do it and then tilt it, because I'm trying to do it. So now if we look, that's where the amp will be mounted, and you can see that now, and you can see the tubes will be on the sides, and you can see that there's a clearance here. You perhaps can't see it, but see if I can find something to go through there so if you see, can you see here, I've got space between this backboard and this and the back of the chassis there. So the capacitors will be at the back of there, and what we need to do is we'll just take this out for a moment. And we've got a port on there. We'll just remove that. And you can see we've got a hoil there, and we've got these grills. So these grills are being removed, and I'm going to put a piece of wood across there, glued and screwed. So there's no way anybody can get through to that, any of that live, those live connections on the capacitors, because of course there's going to be 320 odd volts, maybe 330 volts on there, possibly a shade more. So once that's fastened in, that should be okay. Now the other thing I suddenly realised was this panel here is the speaker sockets, and unfortunately they're on that side. I don't suppose it's a real problem, and they only just fit in there anyway. I mean, that's Wem's design, not mine. So they just go in there, and I was a bit worried I'd mounted that transformer. We just look at that. I was a bit worried I'd mounted that transformer too close and they wouldn't fit, but they do fit. So fortunately, because I usually make bodge ups like that and then put it in the cabinet and then it doesn't fit, and it's back out and I'm drilling more holes in it, because my metalwork, as you know, is crap. But I seem to have done a reasonable job on that one. So there we are. That's where we've got to so far. And I think while I'm waiting for these other parts, I think I'll start just putting the components on these boards and trying to just work out where we're going to put the components in relation to the triodes that we've got and whatever. Right, we've done a bit more work to this amp, and we've got some components in on the board. So if we just have a look at those, should we just get a pointer? So we've got a 1k cathode bias resistor, that's for the first stage, 33k grid stopper, 100k plate resistor, and you can see that then is being, it'll be fed from that side. This side will go to the tube socket. There's the treble capacitor, 250 picofarad, 56k slope resistor going to there. Still got voltage on there. Base capacitor, 100 nanofarad. Base pot connects there, and then if you look here, we've got the mid capacitor there, and that is 22 nanofarad. Got 100 nanofarad for the base one. We've got her on the pointer, and then that goes to there, and that's where the base and the mid pot will connect to there, I think, without looking at the diagram, but I think that's pretty much there. And then on from there, we're going to have the volume. So I've done this like, I think it's the Fender Pro Reverb, I think, where you've got the tone stack before the volume pot. So then we'll have the volume pot, and then we're going to put the next stage of the 12AX7 here. We've got plenty of space on this board, so there's no problems there. And I think the other board, I'll have the phase inverter on there, which is going to be a long tail pair. So I had a bit of advice off a guy who's a subscriber to the channel, Matt Fields, and he says that will work pretty well. I was going to use a long tail pair, but I thought I wouldn't have enough gain with the tone stack in there. It's alright if you're just using a volume and a tone, but he says it'll work, and he's built some good amps, so I trust his judgment. What else have we done? So if we go across here, you can see, so the light might just go a bit strange till it adjusts. So these wires protruding through here are the heaters. I've got a grommet in this hole for that. And if we tip it over and have a look, and we need to just zoom out a little bit, like so. I could do with zooming out a bit more, but there we go. We've got it in shot. Just wait for the flickering to stop till it adjusts itself. Usually does that when I put my hand there. There we go. So if we look on here, I've got the heaters wired up for the tubes. That's going through there. Still not got that quite straight, but never mind. A little bit of a kink in that wire there. There's nothing about that now, it's okay. Heaters going through here, and then we've got a virtual center tap, and I put that on there because it was awkward to do it on the transformer, and we've just got two wires on this end, one on the end of the parallel chain. And what I've done is I've used a terminal there, M4 bolt, star washer, and clamped him up. That's soldered well good, and that's quite solid. Remember, we've got a 40mm gap on the back of this chassis to the back of the case, so we'll be fine with that. And that's basically it, what we've done so far. What I am going to do tonight, and it is quite late now, it's 11 o'clock. What I am going to do is I'm going to put some super glue on these nuts here, here, and the other two on the other side, three on the other side, sorry. And I'm going to let that set overnight, so there'll be no fear of those coming loose. Right, I've done a bit more. I've got the clamp fitted, the I can't remember what you call those now. Anyway, it's for the mains cable, the grip cord. I've got the heaters wired into the transformer now there. Just find it. L pointer. I've got one somewhere. Use that will do. So yeah, we've got those wired in there. We've got a few more components on here, and I've started wiring up, wired up the cathodes on the 12X7 and the plates. Let's have a look underneath. There we go. So these wires coming in here. So there's just the grids now to wire up on that one. As I said, we're still waiting for some parts, so I'm just dotting about, doing things that I can do until we get more parts. The transformer is on its way. That's been dispatched. The output transformer, that is. Right, so there we go. That's most of those done. Now the next thing I'm going to start to look at is this long tail pair. So we're going to have a look at that, and probably fit this onto this board here. I may end up with more board space than I thought I would. I don't know yet. There's still a lot of stuff to go in here. The cathode bypass capacitors on these cathodes on the 12X7, they will be going on the switch, because those switches on the front of the amp, those slide switches, I'm going to wire a capacitor on either side of those, so we've got a little bit of variation. And same on the other one as well. Normally we would only have maybe one cathode bypass capacitor on this first stage and not one on the second, but I think because you usually end up with too much gain if you do that, but I think we're going to need that, given that we've put a stone stack in between each stage of this 12X7, and then we're going into that long tail pair, which again is only 17 mu gain. Right, I've done a bit more, keep chipping away at it. So we've got the long tail pair wired in, got the 100k to the negative feedback, where we've not got the transformer yet. Got the 220k grid leaks. Yes, that does look a bit strange, and the reason for that is that's my first boo-boo of this project. I forgot to put them, they should have gone there, and I forgot to put them in, but as it happened, that's worked out really well. Pop them in there. We've got the ground up to here, M4, the star washer there, That's the ground. That's the 4K7 there, to ground from the phase inverter from the long tail pair. I've got the cathode capacitors in the bypass capacitors. I've got two because I'm having a cathode resistor on each output tube, so I've got those in. I've not got the bias resistors in yet because we're going to have to jumper those in and set the bias correctly. I've added a couple of capacitors on here, so we only now need to put two underneath because we ended up with a bit extra space. I thought we might as well use it. So these are two Vishays, 22 microfarad at 450 volts, one for the phase inverter and one for the 12AX7 there. Got the 4K7 drop-in resistor on. We've got I want to make a slight amendment there. We're going to put the drop-in resistor there, which will go wide underneath when we get the caps to the screen from the screen capacitor. We've not got that yet. What else have we done? Oh, and there was another boo-boo. So I screwed the grip cord for the mains flex in there, then realized that was the top of the chassis. So you perhaps can just lift that up. You can see I've put him in there now, so I've put a grommet in there to make that look tidy. So that's two boo-boos I've made. What else? I've got the ground from the cathode, from the what will be the cathode resistors and the bypass caps. That's there, going down to that ground lug there, but we don't have the star washers for that yet. Still waiting to order. Improvised a fuse on there because, of course, this is in series on here. This arrangement 120 120 max 240. So I've soldered the fuse into the lugs there, and that's worked brilliant. So that's negated having to drill another hole on there and add another fuse. What we got in, we've got the bypass capacitors for the output tubes. Now I've got to fit that master volume in somewhere there, so I might have to make a slight change on here. I'm not sure yet. We need presence. We're going to have a presence control on this amp as well. So we've got to order the pots for that. So we've still got quite a few bits to come for this yet. The transformer, the output transformer, which will go there, is supposed to be arriving tomorrow. So that's good. I've got to wire the AC up to the bridge rectifier, but again, that's an M5 bolt. We don't have the star washers, so we can't do that yet. This board is finished now, and I've also wired up some of the sockets now on the 12AX7 I have. So let's just tip it over and have a look at what we've got underneath, which is actually the back of the chassis, remember. So you can see is the grip cord for the plug. Now I've wired, you can see here I've wired the cathodes in and whatnot there. So the only thing to go on there is I might have looked at that previously. So what I have done today is I've put these two little tag strips in here so we can add these resistors. Now this one is a screen resistor, 1 watt 1K, and this one is the 1.5K, which is the grid stopper onto the grid of the output tubes there. And we've got one each side. We've got one here and one there. So we're kind of going along. You can see where I've cleaned these off because we're probably going to need some more ground points when we start using the screen cable, because remember we have to ground one end, and we are going to use quite a bit of screen cable on this to try and keep this amp as quiet as possible. So that's about where we've got to really on that. And there we go. So that's looking most delightful. Right. So I'm going to go off and do a bit more, but not tonight because it's 10:30 now. 10:30 on a Thursday. So we've had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. Not so late tonight. It was 11 o'clock last night, and I think the other two nights were the same. So I'm going to knock off now, and I've got 3 gigs over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I won't be doing a hell of a lot to this, but we'll be back full on it Monday, hopefully with more parts. Right, we've done a bit more. quite a bit now. Trying to think what we'd done when before now on the last clip that I did. But we'll just stand those up, bent those over somehow. I don't know I've done that. So we've wired considerably more up now. We've wired most of this bridge rectifier up, just the neutral, the negative ground, whatever to go on there. We've wired up all the plate resistors now. They're all wired up, wired in. We've got the two drop-in resistors in. What are we waiting on? We're waiting on the capacitors have arrived. The brackets haven't. Don't know if we got the transformer. The last clip I'll have to check, but anyway, got the transformer here. This is the Hammond 125D. I've not wired in the secondaries yet on there because we've got this arrangement that we looked at earlier in the video with this with the primary, getting the primary set to the correct plate voltage. So we've still got to sort that out. We won't know that until we've actually run the amp up. So that's all done. Let's have a look underneath. I've wired up, so these sockets are now wired up, the PCL83 sockets. But the screen resistors, there's still no screen feed because again we're waiting for those capacitors for those to be fitted, and we need those clamps. So that's but everything else is wired up on these now completely. We use screen cable wherever we can, try and keep the noise down, and we try to keep the cabling as neat as we can. It's not easy when you're working on these types of chassis, but we try to keep that as tidy as we can get it. That's the center tap, which again, the capacitors, the brackets, same thing. So we're nearly there now. We've just got on this tube, on the 12AX7 tube, we've just got the grids to wire up. Obviously one of those will be the input socket. So here's the faceplate, and I've cleaned this up and got some of the corrosion off it, and we're going to start putting the pots into this now as well. Took those switches off, they need to be cleaned, and there's some components on the back of those, which are these on the back of here. They need to be removed because we'll be putting our cathode bypass capacitors on there, 2 on each switch, on 1 for each stage there. And if we move the camera across a bit more there, so we need to wire from those. Now it's going to be a bit tricky with this because once we start to wire this up and connect it to the chassis, then these two become one, and then shuffling this about is going to be a bit awkward. Right, so we've got a good part of this amplifier done now, and I'm going to make this part 2 because this is getting a bit long now. So just show you a few bits. So the front plate now, I've got all the pots on there. Decided not to bother with the master volume. This amp's not going to be that loud anyway. So just these, all the ones that aren't being used, all the holes should I say that are not being used, have been grommeted. You can see the pots on there. These switches have been taken off, they've been cleaned, and we've cleaned off all the there were some components on there. We've got rid of those, so they've been cleaned up and ready, and they're going to be the switches for the cathode bypass capacitors. We're going to have one on each side of that switch. So that's that. Most of this is wired up now, and these, such as this wire here, that's for the presence control, and that's what we've got to do now is get all the wires down to this front plate. So the only thing left to wire up on here now is the tone stack, and then back into this pin 6 on pin 7, which is the grid on this tube. Obviously the grid on the other side, pin 2, that's for the jack socket for the front, the input jack, which is I've not made up yet. So that's a job I've still got to do, but again, that's bringing stuff down to the front panel. So that's about where we are with this. We've got the negatives side to wire up. We're still waiting for those capacitor clamps, and we're expecting those any day. As I said, those I had to order from China because that's the only place I could find them. So but they are in this country and with the local delivery company, so they shouldn't be too long. And then we can fit these, which are the miniature capacitors, which are going to go underneath. Remember, we've got 40mm clearance, because this is the back, remember, 40mm clearance, so they'll be mounted on the opposite side there. So I'm going to make this part 2, and you all take care, and I'll see you all in another video. Bye for now.